Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel. This is Ebbie with Ebbie Reviews, and this is going to be my review and recap for David Makes Man Season 1, Episode 3, and it's entitled MJB. So, we come in and David is meeting with the school counselor. I can't remember his name. I didn't write it down. Okay, so, you see the counselor talking to David and asking him questions, and you see, and this is not unique unto David. This is to all of us. When anyone asks us a question, or there is any answer that we have to give, there's always the authentic self that is us that answers immediately with no thinking and no filter, and then we filter that through and then we give an actual answer. Sometimes the answer matches what our authentic self is saying. Sometimes our representative will filter it and change it to something else depending on what we think will go better with the conversation. So baby girl is giving her, and we then move to the classroom, and baby girl, her name is Marissa, is giving her presentation. We catch the very end of it about how she comes from this lineage of warrior women and all this good stuff, and you can tell. Hair in my mouth? That's rude. You can tell that David is not paying attention because it's like dozing off, and because when she hits the table to squash the little squib in her hand, and then her hand is bloody, he jolts awake like, oh god. So Dr. Wood sees that, and when the presentation is done, she calls him over, and she's like, what is going on with you? You know, full participation is required in the entirety of my class, not just your part in it. I need you to be paying attention and participate during the whole thing. And he said he's trying, he's tired, blah, 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 blah. And she was like, well, I need you to try harder, especially if you want to go to this fancy school. So, and I believe it comes from a good place. I do honestly believe that Dr. Wood wants him to succeed. She knows that his goal is to get into that fancy school, Hurston. And I believe she's going to do whatever is in her power to, as long as David is making an effort to push to make sure that that happens for him. So she asked him if him and Saren, his best friend, have made up since they got into the fight that happened in the first episode. And he said, I apologize, and we shook hands. And she was like, okay. I don't know that she fully believed him. So she said, well, let's do this. Your project is due tomorrow. Your presentation is due tomorrow. And you have to incorporate Saren into your presentation since y'all are back buddies again. And he's like, wait, what? And she was like, yeah, no, I'm not kidding. You just do what I said. And he was like, okay. So he goes to see Saren. And he's like, hey, you know, and they have a little slight conversation, and he asks Saren, he's like, look, I need you. Dr. Wood said I have to make you a part of my presentation. Y'all bear with me one second. So Saren is like, what you talking about? And he was like, yeah, Dr. Wood said, yeah, I have to do this I have to incorporate you into my presentation. And he's like, so I need you to help me with it. And he was like, well, you gonna have to come spend. He's like, no. And David turned around the same words that the uncle from last week gave him and said, instead of I need you to give me a quick yes instead of a slow no. So Saren is like, okay, but you have to come to my house. And David is like, wait, what? I'm not coming to your house. Because David knows that he's being molested by the stepdad and being beaten. He's like, so you want me to jump into the house of horrors with you? Like, I'm not finna do that. And Saren is like, well, no, he's not gonna be there. I would never let him, and besides, I would never let him do anything to you and all this stuff. So David said, well, I had to call my mama and make sure that it's okay. And why David, I don't know. I assume that's how a child's mind works, is that he would think that since it's happening to Saren, if he goes into Saren's environment, that it would happen to him as well. Yeah, I guess. So they're on the school bus, and they are on their way home to Saren's house. And so clearly Saren is still in pain, and school buses don't have no shocks on it, so every bump, every lump, is tearing Saren up. He's in a lot of pain, but and David notices it, and so without costing anything to Saren, David starts to hold the seat in front of him every time they hit a bump to brace himself so he's not jostled so much. And so now, and then Saren catches on, and so he starts to do it too, and they're laughing, and so it's a moment of shared camaraderie between the two, which I thought was really significant. So they get to Saren's house, and Saren says, okay, you gotta take off your shoes. As soon as they get in the door, you gotta take off your shoes. And so he lines his shoes up perfectly, and so David takes his shoes off and lines them up right next to Saren's. And Sarah is like, welcome to my kingdom, Sir David. What would you like to drink? And he's like, David's silly self talk by, I would like a Kool-Aid jammer on the rock shaken and stirred, please and thank you. And Saren is like, I don't know what I don't know what that is. So he goes in the refrigerator, and it looks like a refrigerator out of a commercial with these glass crafts and juices and berries and things of that nature. And so David is like, no, his refrigerator is filled with styrofoam containers and cost appropriate foods. So he is like, oh my God, you're living the life. And really Saren is looking at him like, the price to live this life is absolutely not worth it. So David and Saren are talking about his project, and Saren tells David that he's never actually met his father. He doesn't even know what he looks like. So they're sitting there talking and then chit-chatting, and Saren hears a car pulls up, and he freaks the fuck out. He completely panics. He panics and goes into oh my God mode, and so he jumps up and he's like, oh God, and he puts the craft of the juice back in the refrigerator, and then he runs to the front door and stands at attention at the front door, and it's his mama coming in the house. And the way his mama talked to him and their interaction at that door, his mama is the one that's beating him. Now, his stepdaddy is molesting him at night, but his mama is the one that's beating the dog bricks off this little boy. Now, I thought it was the stepdaddy, since he was already sexually abusing him, he was also physically abusing him, but I don't believe that to be the case now. I believe he is getting abused on both ends. Physically abused by his mama, she's beating him, and sexually abused by his stepdad, who's touching on him at night. Okay. So David is talking to the counselor, and now his voice, his inner voice has multiplied by two. They both giving the doctor bullshit to the questions, but David taking a beat to filter and answer appropriately. And he was like, well, how did your mom feel about you having to spend the night? And he was like, she was okay. She doesn't really like it, though, ever since this past summer. And he was like, oh, yeah, I know you live in the Ville. And he was like, yeah. And he was like, a friend, my best friend passed away this summer. And my mother doesn't really like me being out of her sight since that happened. And he's like, okay. Miss Glow, because the time jumps all over the place. So we go back to David's mama, Gloria, coming to pick up JG. Miss Elisha was watching him while she was at work, since David spent the night at Sarah's house. And, you know, Elisha and Gloria have a good Judy relationship. It's absolutely, you know, that's my good girlfriend. And they've run the streets a time or two together. So, I like their relationship, and I hope they get to explore the relationship between Gloria and Elisha, Miss Elisha more. Also, Star was there, and she didn't really do much. She just said, hey, when Glow came in the house. Now, when Gloria was walking into her house, Elisha looked over the balcony, and what she sees is Red Dreads. His name is Ray, the drug dealer that was with David last episode, is getting arrested by the police, which is probably going to cause an issue, because I think the light-skinned boy, I call him Drake Light, because I don't know his name. I think his name is Chinobi. Light Skin Drake is the one that with the tattoo on his face is gonna be the one that takes over, with Red Dress being out of commission, and he don't see it for David. So and he's the one that saw David swaying and talking to himself last week. So we'll see what happens there. So David and Saren are in bed, not bed together, but one bed. They're right next to each other in Saren's room, and they are talking. And David says he feels like he can't keep still, like he always feels like he has to keep moving. And Saren has the opposite issue. I think they're both dealing with their anxiety and trauma in very different ways. Saren is very much the flight or fight response. You know, some people will, like an animal, when it senses danger, it'll do one or two things. It'll either take off running, or it will freeze, or you'll freeze. David is the one who will take off or do something. Saren freezes. And he says he feels stuck, like he can't move. He's paralyzed. So David says to Saren, you need to tell somebody what's happening and what's going on. And Saren says, I told you. He said, I told you. You are the person that I told. He's like, yeah, I know, but you need to tell someone else, an adult. You need to tell somebody who can do something about this. And they have one more session left with the counselor. At least that's what was said at the end of the episode. I am hoping that David says something to the counselor about Saren, because he cannot continue to stay in that environment. And because it's not good. It's not good. They're going to end up killing that baby, or he's going to kill himself. Something's going to happen. So they have a conversation about if Saren thinks that his mama knows that this man is touching him at night. And she may know, And that may be what's fueling her anger and why she is beating him, that's where what I'm getting from it. Something something with his mama is not right. So, when David wakes up the next morning and he goes into the kitchen, to find that the stepdad has come home early from his trip, and the stepdad and mama is being very lovey-dovey, and so you it's palpable the tension in Saren. Like he's moving like there's a wild dog in the room. And I don't know if the wild dog is his mama or the stepdaddy. Or he considers them both wild animals and he knows that one wrong move, and it doesn't matter, and one wrong move could trigger either one of them, and it's not going to be good for him. So he's playing the game, the happy go lucky we're a family game, because they have company, which is David. And David is like, what the fuck is happening? David is like, I don't. David is really like, I don't understand. And so when they get to school, because they had to call Marissa and ask her, because the song that David wanted for his project was too high for Saren to sing, so they enlisted Marissa to help them. And so when they get to school and they're sitting down, and Marissa is pacing back in front of them, she fussing them out. She ain't giving them a word in edgewise, no nothing. So they having a whole conversation while she's literally fussing at them. And so Saren explains that it's a game that he has to play in order to survive. And he says, I wish it wasn't a game. Because David didn't understand. You know, he's like, it looks like you fine, nothing's happening. He was like, because we're playing. He's like, because we're playing the game. That's the pretty face that they put on the filthy underneath that's happening in that house, as them to be a happy family in front of guests. You're not going, especially if the mama doesn't know that the stepdaddy is touching him. I don't know, the whole thing, it's a lot, and it hurt my heart. So the story that David tells for his presentation of Who I Am is the story of his mama, and how she got pregnant by a professor at her school, and she went to his house with her baby, with David with her, to confront him. And his wife answered the door, and she was like, this is his baby, and I want my son to know his daddy. And the woman was like, well, what are you talking about? She lost in the sauce. The professor shows up, calling her all kinds of hood rats, and she's a liar, and blase bloom and blue, because he not trying to get his spot blown up, even though he know good and damn well that's his baby. And then this is how he told on himself. He was like, I know I'm not the only person that you slept with. Guilty. Electric chair. Okay. So a confrontation ensues. He calling her all kinds of hood rats and things, trying to discredit her in front of his wife so he can not lose his marriage. Not that he cared about it to begin in the first place, otherwise he wouldn't have been sleeping with one of his students, or several of his students. And little baby girl and David mama was like, look, I may be the first that just came to your door with a baby, but I promise you I won't be the last, because he continues to do this. So be prepared. And so he's like, get away from my door, you hood rat, and blah, 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 blah. She was like, I'm leaving, and I've never come. He's like, you come back here, I'm calling the cops. She was like, you never got to worry about me coming back. I'm never coming back. And when my son grows up to be something, don't claim him then, because you don't want him now. And they sing Mary Blige's Your Child in the background while David is telling his story. And he is speaking about the song and how people like to tell you you're nobody and you come from nothing because you don't have your father in your life. And there was a song on the radio that told you that you are not nothing. And then he says, I am not nothing. And they did a good job. And then at the end, when class is dismissed, and he thanks Marissa, and she was like, you both owe me, so be advised. And excuse me, I'm tired. One of the students comes up to David, one of the white students come up to David, and they're like, man, that was a great story. It was so important for you to tell. And gives them and daps him up. And Serena's like, what was that? And David's like, I don't know, white privilege? I was like, more like white guilt, but okay. Even though he has nothing to be guilty for, that's not his life, and he had nothing to do with it. Still. The counselor asked David, why didn't he do his presentation on his friend who died this summer? And he was like, because that wasn't what the assignment was. It's about where he came from. And Sky was concerned about where he was going, where his future was. That he's the one who told him about getting into Hurston, and that he was better than the projects that they lived in, and that he could accomplish and be anything. So that's why he didn't do the project on Sky. And that's how the episode ended. It was a really good episode. I really encourage everyone to like, comment, and subscribe. Y'all come on down in our comments. We don't have to argue like El Teddy official says, but we can start a conversation. I believe that the mama is the one that put them bruises on that baby's torso. So y'all let me know what y'all think. Do y'all think he's getting it from he's being beaten by his mama and then sexually abused by the stepdaddy? Because that's what I inferred from what happened. Where do you think this is gonna go next? It's a lot going on. Let's talk about it. We're gonna talk about it. Talk about it. Okay, I'm gonna get my life together because clearly my ADD is cutting up. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.